The media produces consistent, self-fulfilling prophecies. It's why whenever there's one of these mass tragic events, so be careful about how I describe it, they say don't say the person's name, don't report information about this person. They're going to be happy about it. They want to use this for press and attention. The media says things and they create the idea and the psychology behind these ideas. Something really fascinating is happening with the Joker. It's not the Joker, it's just Joker. It's coming out today. Got my tickets already. Gonna go see it. I'm excited. I hear really, really great things. And this brings me to the point about how weird the media has been lately. Pertaining to the Joker specifically. I mean, the media is weird as a whole. But they were calling this a masterpiece. And now we're hearing select Joker screenings to be policed with NYPD undercover tactics for opening weekend. I'm not going to go see this movie in New York because that freaks me out. That is weird, okay? I can't say I would, I'm glad police want to keep these theaters safe, but dude, this whole narrative has been fake the whole time. I mean, I get it. There have been some theaters, there have been threats, but it started with the press. So listen, something happened. The military warned there's potential threats. They're vague, indirect. Then some theater got a threat. Before any of this, the media started the narrative. So if you want to ask me my personal opinion, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that there is any talk whatsoever about Joker. It's not the first time he's appeared in a movie. I get it. We had that one event, that one time, where a lunatic did a bunch of crazy things, and it's disgusting and detestable, but we have to recognize that things like this can happen, okay? Sometimes there are crazy people who sometimes do crazy things. And this particular instance was particularly egregious and disgusting and vile, and we all know it. But to then think that any movie containing the Joker at any point forever is going to be a hotbed for this activity is pulling a pattern out of nothing. It was a guy who was crazy. We know this. So here's what ends up happening. The first reviews come out. Joker is a masterpiece, they say. And I was really, intrigued and impressed because the movie doesn't really look like it's about the Joker. Okay, you look at Dark Knight and you can see the Joker in Dark Knight has henchmen and an army. Like however he does it, when he lights money on fire, they still follow him and he takes over Gotham, basically. He takes over the crime syndicates. It's really, really interesting. That's a supervillain. When you look at Joker, I was really skeptical at first, kind of just like, it just seems to be about a crazy guy dancing in the street. You know, the first trailers came out and everyone was praising it. And I'm like, for what though? It's like, it's him putting on makeup and then like running through the street. I don't even know what's going on. Apparently the movie's pretty gruesome. At least that's what I've heard, but maybe not. So all of a sudden these reviews started coming out calling it a masterpiece. And that's really interesting to me because critics are typically politically correct, right? You know, you see the Dave Chappelle thing, you see Rambo, you see Death Wish. These movies come out, and the critics slam it for the political message. But when the Joker reviews came out, they were praising it just, a month ago as a masterpiece. And I said, that's interesting. But then all of a sudden the story started changing. All of a sudden they started saying it's an incel's wet dream. It is the champion hero to incels. And they started talking about the potential danger of incels coming with weapons and threatening theaters. And then all of a sudden it happened. And I'm thinking to myself, but I understand the media is not a monolith. Not every critic is the same person. But how do these trends emerge? That it's overwhelmingly praised, but then all of a sudden overwhelmingly criticized. And you're seeing people say that, the director and the production company and the studio, Warner Brothers, they need to come out and condemn gun violence, and it becomes a political issue. And I'm like, weren't y'all just praising this? And there it is. The media says over and over again, incel's wet dream, threats will happen, there's a big risk, and then someone gets the idea. There's a funny story. In Chicago, there was a thing called superheroin. I believe this was fentanyl, or I could be wrong. This was a while ago. Something really, really funny happened. You see, a sad story. The funny circumstances come after the tragedy. I'm not trying to downplay the tragedy that people lost their lives, but several people lost their lives in the south side of Chicago from taking what people were calling superheroin. And it was like 4 deaths. I'm paraphrasing, so you have to look this one up, but the story you'll see the point. So I remember seeing on the news this story. They said 4 people had died on the south side due to overdoses from superheroin. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. What do you think happened the next day? I'm sorry, hold on, let me stop. No, we'll keep going. What do you think happened the next day? The next day, the news reported, maybe not the next day, but like a week later, 16 deaths from superheroin. I was like, it's getting worse. Whoa. But there's one important factor in what made it get worse. You see, the thing is, those 16 people who died in the same place as the 4 people who died. They must be selling more. Nope. It was that the news reported the location of where the people overdosed, and other people were like, whoa, I want to go check out that. That sounds great, and then overdosed too. The story may be apocryphal, it may be an urban legend, because it's something I vaguely remember, so definitely fact check me, but you get the point. I've read stories about like the crack epidemic, about how when the media kept pushing it and saying it was here, it was available, here's what it did, all of a sudden people started going and looking for it because you informed them. So there's an interesting conundrum here in the concept of, pushing an idea through the press. And so I can absolutely sympathize with, some of the people who are concerned about hate speech and racism on these social media platforms. But I want to stress the difference in someone's legitimate political protected opinion and the media fear-mongering you and driving a narrative that results in people going and seeking out certain behaviors. It's one thing, and I understand they'll try and argue the same thing, but hold on. It's one thing if someone says, here's how I feel about, this political issue. It's another thing if someone just starts drumming up fear for clicks and rage bait, and that includes anybody on any side of the spectrum. If you have a racist guy who's just lying and making outrageous content for the sake of it and riling up his base, it's a really, really bad thing. Ultimately, the point I guess I'm trying to make, look, they're absolutely allowed to talk about their fears, but this is a media phenomenon that I find particularly worrying because, no, we don't need NYPD showing up and policing our theaters because the media got this idea that incels would go and target themselves. Like, that's the big point, right? That the Joker is a hero for incels, and they're all going to go see it, so then incels will show up and kill each other? I'm really confused by the narrative they're trying to push here with this claim. They say that essentially the Joker is this hero for incels, and they all want to see it, so then why would they show up to kill each other? You see the point I'm trying to make? I don't know. I should probably read the story, I guess. They say, the New York City Police Department will be increasing its presence both in and out of uniform by deploying undercover officers to Joker screenings in select locations for the DC film's opening weekend. In addition to visibly policing theaters that are scheduled to show the R-rated film, Deadline reports that undercover tactics will be rolled out for the screenings in Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island as an extra security measure for cinemagoers. This is 360 policing. This is 360-degree policing approach to ensure safety for ticket buyers in their seats, as well as on the streets, a law enforcement official said. If something happens inside one of the screenings, we intend to be able to pacify the situation quickly and conclusively. An NYPD spokesperson confirmed to the outlet that there was no specific or credible threats at the time in regards to the opening of the Joker. So this is the great point. Often what we see in how, media reacts to these stories is a knee-jerk reaction that polices nothing and changes nothing. There is no threat to these theaters, but the NYPD is going to come out anyway. Why? Why should we spend money on something that's not an issue? It's just a movie. It's not the first time the Joker's existed or anyone else. But when the media puts out these big trends and stories, and again, I'm not trying to point the finger at an individual here. I'm saying it's like all of these outlets want to then talk about the same thing, and they're all freaking out about something that never really happened. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to. Not at all. And I think, again, it is absolutely fair to criticize anyone, be it alternative media or otherwise, for highlighting issues that result in fear-mongering or trends that serve no purpose. So I guess, in the end, what it really comes down to is we're all a part of this big machine where no matter what you talk about, you're giving credence to a certain idea. So I guess the best thing I can say is I'm biased towards myself, Like the way I view it is telling people not to freak out. The problems aren't that bad, and the media needs to chill. So of course, I guess I think I'm doing good. But in the end, this is what we get. We get police showing up to our theaters. We get this weird turnaround where the media, all of these different outlets were praising the film, but now they're scared that incels are going to show up. And now police actually arrive when nothing happened. Nothing. I'm going to go see the movie. I'm sure it's going to be fine. I'm curious as to whether or not it's going to be good or bad, considering the way the critics tend to approach films. And this one's getting rave reviews, but now they've turned on it. And interestingly, we can see that, Todd Phillips, the director, made a statement saying that it was inspired by woke outrage to some degree. So maybe, but I would be curious, when you look at what happened with Dark Knight and that crazy guy, this was a guy showing up to a mainstream film full of, regular mainstream audiences, and he was nuts. If this movie is depicting this guy, the main character, and these crazy people are supposed to like it, wouldn't they show up and cheer for it? Why would they go show up to a movie that's supposed to be good for them? They say following Joker's triumphant debut at the Venice Film Festival, the Todd Phillips directed film has faced pockets of controversy. Some critics have questioned whether or not Joker is a dangerous movie, including the families from the Aurora incident. Speaking to Vanity Fair, Phoenix addressed some of the pushback, saying that he didn't imagine that it would be smooth sailing, as it is a difficult film, though he believes, in some ways, it's good that people are having strong reaction to it. No, you know what, man? We can't have nice things. Everything just seems to be breaking down, falling apart. The political world is so insane and frustrating. And I'm reading this really interesting report about new political groups that are forming and breaking away from the mainstream. And I just kind of feel like everything's falling apart. And this is evidence of it. It's just a movie, But now everything is about politics. The making of this film apparently was inspired because comedians couldn't make, offensive jokes. So he said, fine, we'll make the joke, or we'll say F comedy. Then you get all of these, leftist, woke outlets talking about the rise of incels and incel violence. And it's like, you know what, man? I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to go to a movie where there's going to be a bunch of undercover cops. That just seems weird to me. I understand, but that's not the world I ever wanted to be living in, where there's cops on every corner, where there's police with, AR-15 standing outside of train stations, and that's where we are. Now we can't even go to a movie without police hiding among us. This is not the kind of, country that I wanted to be in. Again, I don't think in the end, I think people will go see the movie and they'll be fine. But we've got to think about what the end result is. Hidden cops everywhere? I'm not okay with that, man. Whatever. This stuff's so depressing. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on the main channel, youtube.com/Timcast. I'll see you there.